Thank you everyone for joining. Give us a few minutes. We'll start in just about a minute. Meanwhile, I can see that there are some of the AMP learners also on this webinar, but if you're not an AMP learner and you're joining us from somewhere else, it would be great if you tell us maybe just in the chat where you're joining us from. Saumya, what about you? Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you guys from San Francisco Bay Area, so in the US.
All right. Okay, we have someone from Vijayawada. I think Pankaj, you've joined us earlier as well, if I'm not mistaken, on some of our other webinars, but welcome. So we will encourage lots and lots of questions. Please do put your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat. It's easy to answer from there. And from time to time, where I feel that the question can be answered live, I will unmute you so that Saumya can take your question directly. All right. I think we're almost there. Then, Saumya, just give me a minute and let's begin the session today. Thank you, Saumya. As everyone heard, Saumya joins us from San Francisco. She has over a decade of experience in healthcare across technology, consulting, pharma, biotech, as well as global health. Currently, Saumya is a senior product manager at Google, and she leads the health features in the company's wearable and mobile portfolio, such as heart rate, vitals, numerous health notifications, etc. Saumya has worked previously with McKinsey. She holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School. She was formerly an Ashoka Young India Fellow, and Saumya also is an alum from the IIT Bombay. Saumya started her career as chief of staff to the chairman of Cipla, and later led multiple M&As for the company in Asia, Africa, and South and Middle East. Saumya is also a young mom. She has a 7-month-old baby. And since we are talking to Saumya just a day after the International Women's Day, it would be interesting also to get your perspective about women and product management. But Saumya, the floor is yours. Do tell us a little about yourself, and also how did you end up in product management?
Thanks, Seema. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, it's I have had a rather non-traditional path to product management, as you can see from my background. I entered product rather recently, maybe 3 or 4 years back. Maybe I can tell you a little bit more about what I do at Google and what kind of things excite me, and then I can tell you the story of my life in terms of how I ended up in Google. So at Google, I lead, as you mentioned, health features across all our portfolio, whether it's Pixel Watch, Fitbit, mobile, etc. And as I was thinking about joining Google, and of course I've been in health all my life, I was like, why? People were asking, why are you joining Google? It's not a health company. And the first realization I had was Google is the biggest health company in the world. 80% of the patients go to Google even before they talk to their partner or husband or mom when they see a symptom like, hey, I'm having a headache. Hey, there's a red patch on my skin. Should I be worried about this? And so whether we associate Google to be a health company or not, it is the biggest health company in the world. And that excited me a lot, coming from the traditional pharma, biotech, innovation side of things. At Google, I work on thinking through how the sensors around us and the data that Google collects across its ecosystem can be used to make users' health better. So, some examples include, of course, the most obvious examples is with your smartwatch and wearables. And, we, of course, collect the number of steps you take, but we also collect your heart rate. And we collect now with the latest sensors, we can collect the temperature of your skin and, your oxygen saturation or SpO2. We can collect how balanced your walk is and whether you have a higher probability of fall or not. And so if you think about all of these things from the wearable, and then a lot of people don't realize we have a health diagnostic tool in our pocket every day. Like, for example, your phone, you have, of course, your audio receptors, you have camera. Your phone knows when you cough. Your phone knows when when you're wobbly. Your phone knows when you're fatigued because your eyes doze off quickly. And so it's kind of interesting to think of all of these sensors from a health perspective. It's a rather new field. I think using technology sensors for health, especially for consumer health, has been only a field for the last, 5, 6 years, maybe a decade, since consumer wearables started becoming a mainstream idea. So I think it excites me a lot. That's the number one thing on product. You need to work on a product that excites you. You need to work on a space that excites you. I, of course, have been in health for a long time. I had not been a part of the technology world until I joined Google. Let me tell you a little bit about how I ended up here. So I, of course, as you mentioned, I did my undergrad at IIT Bombay. I was an engineer, but I did everything except engineering in IIT. Story of a lot of people who do engineering. And coming out of that, I think I made the third best decision of my life. My first best decision was to have a daughter. The second best decision was to marry my husband. And the third best decision was to join YIF. And that was because it really changed the way I could think about problems. It really changed my understanding of the number of variables it goes to create any impact, whether it's understanding psychology, human behavior, history of where all of this comes from, what we can learn from the past, organizational structures, and authentic leadership development. You talk about like the real core of what makes you a good person, a good professional, is to sort of start expanding your worldview. And I think that's what happened with YF. The other thing that was like I did not realize it's so important, but really started my journey in YF was around communication and storytelling. I think it's the most important skill for any job, especially product management. And we had a course on writing, and I was like, I'm 20 years old, 21 years old, and have not done a single course, a serious course on writing. It's just, it's quite mind-boggling, right? It was the first time I did a course on writing. Again, a step change in my life. I love writing. It's a way for me to express my thoughts. And so that happened. And during YF is when I got interested in the health field. I was working with the transgender community where HIV is very prevalent. And I got really passionate about access to healthcare. And so after YIF, I joined CIPLA, which is very well known in India for access to HIV and anti-malarial drugs across the world. I was lucky enough to join in a role that gave me a pivotal sort of view of where the company was going. I joined to lead the transformation in the company. We were professionalizing the company, worked with the CEO and chairman very closely to think through how to do a large scale change that impacts around 20,000 employees. And it's a very different ball game where you want to roll out a change that impacts so many people versus doing a small product. But I think the skill that I really understood from there is sort of execution, because you need to work with a lot of stakeholders, you need to motivate people, you need to track progress and such. And so I also led a lot of international M&As and set up the team for post-merger integration there. Gives you a really good view of what business is, like really the nuts and bolts of business. You can understand when you do an M&A because you need to figure out whether this is profitable or not, how to turn around a company, how to change profitability from 5% to 20% in 6 months. It is really the nuts and bolts of business. So I think CIPLA sort of showed me execution in business. By the time I was sort of well settled in CIPLA. This is what I do. I approved myself. It was like, okay, this, I know this. And so what's next? And partly because of love, because my husband was here, then boyfriend, now husband, in the US, and partly because I wanted to get back to technology and innovation side of things. I came to the US and did my MBA from Harvard. I also think it's a good idea every few years, like 4 or 5 years, to do something that helps you take a step back and really reflect on what you want to be and who you are and learn new things. And HBS did that for me. I interned at Moderna which now is very well known. That time it was a 500 people small company. And I really tested whether I wanted to go into innovation side of things or not. So I worked on the most out there idea in biotech, which is personalized cancer vaccines. And I loved it. I loved the innovation side of things, but I knew that as a commercial business person, I would never be the creator of an innovation in biotech. And also it takes, 15, 20 years for the innovation to get to market. And so um, I loved innovation, but at the same time, I realized that biotech might not be the right fit for me. And so I ended up thinking like joining McKinsey after. And the reason I joined McKinsey was I was not sure whether I'm going to join McKinsey or not. In my interview, I asked one of the partners on why is it that I should join McKinsey, and he said there are three types of people in the world. McKinsey partners always start with three. So the three kinds of people in the world. The first one is executors. The second one is creators. The third ones are consultants. For the first 2 or 3 years of your life in McKinsey, you will learn all three skills and you'll be great at all three. You'll build the foundation for all three. And after like 2, 3 years, you'll realize if you're a consultant or not. And then you can either continue at McKinsey or not. And so I was convinced. I was like, I need to learn problem solving, and it's the best place to learn problem solving. So I think that's what McKinsey taught me. It taught me how to get into a situation and like sort of figure out, what's signal and what's noise, and come to an answer in a field that's totally new to you, like interviewing experts, leading a team of motivated people, talking to executives and telling them what the answer is when you're rather young and you don't have any
So
experience.
is product management somewhat like that to
Yes and no. I think the three profiles I talked about: executor, creator, consultant. Product manager is in the first two buckets. You're not a consultant. You don't influence, you actually do. You influence stakeholders, but you eventually are the decision maker. And that's the reason I left McKinsey, because after 3 years, I realized I was not getting the satisfaction of launching things and leading a team. Um, but my years at McKinsey, showed me how to do problem solving and gave me the basic toolkits. And so I think throughout my career, if I reflected my job at Google, throughout my career, I picked up skills that were essential for Google. Um, and people have different views of product management. In my view, I think the goal of a product manager is to get the most effective, useful product tool solution to the user. Everything else is secondary. Of course, you need to do it in a business sustainable way, because otherwise you won't exist, like the company won't exist. And to be able to do that, you need execution, need to be able to work with marketing, legal, figure out what it takes to actually deliver something to the market. Most of the junior PM roles focus on execution. It's like, can you actually, get stuff done from engineers, write product requirements, work with, user designer, designers and user researchers and marketing, and to form a story, to design the product, to test the product, etc. So a lot of junior roles are around execution. The second most important skill, I think, is deciphering signal from noise. People call it strategy. Some people call it, knowing what to do. As you become more and more senior, that's what you need to do. You need to be able to see a lot of data, see a lot of market intel, see a lot of competitors, see a lot of your own company strategy, and figure out what is signal, what is noise, what do I need to build, why do I need to build it, all the
and
questions that probably.
do these signals come just from the market or your consumers, or are these signals also coming from within your organization, from within different parts? And therefore, you sort of, I mean, I read the word cross-functional many times on your profile. So is
Yeah.
your leader's role in product management also to understand signals that are coming from everywhere and then figure out how to capture it?
Yes. So the signals come from everywhere. Just like in life, you get signals from, your husband and your daughter and your boss. And so, you always get information from everywhere. Market is, of course, an important factor. You can't build something that's not going to get funded. You can't build something where the market is too immature and actual adoption will come in 7 years. You can build. It's more research product, right? It would not be a commercial product. um at the same time, the core of product management is user, right? Like you can go into the perfect market which is ripe for disruption and have a wrong product. It's not going to work. And so the biggest signal is user signal, and it's very sad, but it's probably the most underlooked signal as well, because a lot of time the signal from org and mission strategy sort of, how do you impress your VP, it clutters your view. And so great product managers can see through and figure, like, the good thing about product management is if you launch a product and it's successful, you are successful. So your real sort of step change in career is it's pretty unbiased, right? Like it's like you're an actor. You're like, I don't know, Ranveer Singh, or you sort of launch a movie. You could be the, nobody, and then the people love you, and so you become a big star. And so it's the same with product management. Eventually, it comes down to whether users love you or not. And that's why the biggest signal is user, but it's also the most underlooked signal, because a lot of time when you're in big orgs, it's easy to get really mired into what my VP wants and what the CEO wants. It is important. You can't build an entertainment product in a healthcare company, right? But at the same time, you need to sort of figure out the user story first. So yeah, so I think you get signals from multiple places. You need to figure out what's important at what time in product management.
So what you're really saying is that a role of managing a product is not really just about in being an interface between the technology part of it and perhaps the business part of it. It's much more. It's understanding.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be a real understatement if you sort of synthesize a product manager's role to, hey, translate user need into requirements, right? Of course, that's where you start, right? I think it also depends on who you are asking and what's the maturity of that product manager in his or her career, or in general, like what they bring to the table. It takes time and experience, and sometimes even there, you can be a whiz, you can be a 20-year-old who sort of has a vision. It takes practice to build the muscle of figuring out signal from noise. And like, I think the third skill, which let me talk about, and then we can come back to the strategy piece of it, is actually having the courage to tell a story. Say, being able to say no to your VPs, like, no, this is not what's going to work, and to be able to tell a story that's going to inspire your team to build. Like, as product managers, most of the time you don't have direct reports into, like, marketing doesn't report to you and engineers doesn't report to you. You might have other product managers reporting to you. So you need to be able to tell a story. If you cannot inspire an organization, and you cannot say it in a way that is crystal clear and courageous, it's very difficult to make a change. And so I think that's sort of complement that. You have to be able to see what's right, which is signal from noise, and then you have to be able to communicate it in a way that resonates, and is clear. And so, yeah, I think
your story has to be told inside and outside.
Yes. A lot of times people think they are different stories. I think it's the same. If the more similar or same the story is, the better you are as a communicator. Eventually, like, if you can write your story in 30 words, that's all that matters. It takes a long time to get to 30 words from like 300,000 words or like 3,000 words in your document, right? And so, yeah, it is like, can you really pinpoint what you're doing and inspire people to do it? Which is true with a lot of roles, especially true in product management.
Okay, so I'll take the first question here, and I think it sort of is sort of linked to what we were talking about, whether technology and product means that you have to know one to be able to become the other. This is Pragya, who wants to know, is it necessary to know coding to become a PM?
No, I don't know how to code. So, and I think I'm decent product manager, I think. I will caveat that it depends on the product. It also depends on the company. Um, More recently, even the most of the technical companies like Google and Facebook have opened their doors to product managers who do not code. Um, but you do need to have a sense of technological trade-offs. You should be able to talk to engineers and understand if we build system X versus system Y, what are the trade-offs? Should we invest in one or not? What would be the user experience? How would our cost of running it, maintaining it changes, right? And so for Google specifically, you won't believe, I did study system design. I did study what it takes to scale large apps. And it helps me day to day to be able to have take the right decisions and have the right conversations with engineers. Not all product companies need it. There are design led product companies like Airbnb, in which design is king. It's not engineering, and so you probably need even less information about technology. There are business-driven product companies like Amazon, where the goal of the product manager is to increase the business, and so you knowing more about how to improve business would be more useful than how to code or how to know technology. So I think, yeah, there are three different kinds of companies. One is design led, one is engineering led, and the other one is business led. And you need to know what you're applying for. For technology led companies like Google, it's good to have basic understanding of system design, but you can learn it. I had no idea what system design meant like 4 years back. And, you can learn it in a few months, at
But
least the
is
basics.
that because you had an engineering background and therefore you could learn it, or was that not?
Um, it helps, I would say. But I also have friends who are product managers in Google who have a master's in literature. And so eventually you need to be analytical and you need to be able to grasp something new. System design is not that, it's not like coding or it's not like engineering. It's more so in theory of complex things. It's about like how do you, if you have a parking lot and you need to build a system for parking, like what are the things you will think about, right? And so, or then how do you scale that system to 1,000 car parking lot from a 10 car parking lot? So it's more like analytical thinking and problem solving, and less about engineering. But it helps because as an engineer, you do a lot of like statistical courses and you're more analytical. So
So we have a question here from Eva. I think she's asked it twice, so I think one of them is fine. She wants to know what is the main difference between a project manager and a product manager. So she says that both these roles are tightly connected, but is there a difference? Is there a difference you can spot and identify? Also, a caveat, she's transitioning. She's a project manager going on for a product manager role. So what are the skills that will help her in the transition? So two
so
parts
they
to
are
the
different
question.
roles. Yeah. Yeah. So they are different roles. They are related. I work. My team has a project manager, and I work with her very closely. The main difference is what versus how. So project managers work on how to deliver the product. And so they will work on what are the timelines, how do we launch, how do we get, how do we sort of coordinate across teams. So it's a lot more on the execution pillar that I talked about. Product managers, of course, need to have the execution skill set, but their key deliverable is what are we building, why are we building it, what does the product look like, is it the right product to build, etc. Then of course, if you don't have a project manager in your team, you sort of also do the role of translating it into execution, but that's a part of your role, not the entire role. I, for example, have a project manager in my team, so my role more so is on the what and how and requirements and why, versus the day-to-day sort of tracking progress. So that those are different. And I talked about the skills already, so I sort of partially answered the second question. Um, I think the biggest skill you need to develop or have, which is in addition to your project management, gives you a lot of like skills that are very useful for product. But I think the additional skill I would say is like um, product insight or intuition, which is if you're given a problem, can you decipher what is the user problem you're solving? What are the pain points? What kind of features you want to develop? And so it's the creation aspect of product, which is net new for project managers.
So if as a project manager, what are the 2 or 3 skills that, when she's making the transition that she'll really find useful? Definitely the execution part you've already said, but is there anything else in that role which becomes more relevant here? Any other skill that stands out?
I think as a project manager, you need to work with so many functions. I think it's the only other role that actually understands really what marketing does versus who do you ask the right questions to get a meaningful answer. I think you need to do that, a lot of that. As a product manager, you're not an expert, you don't know everything, and so you need to tap on the experts, whether it's research or whether it's designers or whether it's market intel, like, and so I think execution is the other one. Second is like understanding what is the role of every person in the org and who to ask which questions. They also do a lot of synthesis. I think project managers do a lot of synthesis on like distilling it down to what the bottlenecks are and what are the decisions that we need to make. They of course do a lot of work around complex organizational conflicts, which also come as a product manager. So yeah, it has quite a bit of overlap. So there are lots of skill sets that you can take to product role.
Okay. When you're preparing to transition, and you may not be a project manager or you may not have ever done a product management's role, how hard is it or how easy is it? What do you need to think if you've never done product management? What should you be doing to build that muscle to eventually transition into a product management role? Are there some things you should ask yourself first before you even apply for those roles?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And there's a tactical answer to this question and there's a philosophical answer to this question. So let me start with the tactical bit. If you want to be a product manager, you don't have product in your resume, right? It is tricky in this market. When I transitioned from McKinsey to Google, I thought that product would be the right fit for me because of what I'm excited by. But I was also keenly aware that I would not get a product role if I just interview out of the door. And that's because you have so many people with especially technology product experience that are in the market. Why would they bet on me, right? Like, I don't know how to work with engineers. I have no track record of understanding what to build. Of course, I have track record of other skills like execution or strategy or, so what may. But and so the first thing you need to do is to test. Is this the right role for you? And are there low risk opportunities to try it out? Maybe do an ancillary role to product. That's what I did. I joined BizOps in Google, and I worked very closely on a lot of projects that were sort of very complementary to the product role. For example, I worked on pricing, in which you need to understand the market. We did conjoints, we did user studies, we figured out what should be the price point of a specific product. I did a lot of project on sort of product prioritization and strategy. And, as in BizOps, you get the benefit of working with senior management directly. It's like a strategy role. So I ended up sort of, understanding from a product leadership perspective, how do they make decisions and allocate resources. I also worked on setting up the health organization inside Google. And in Google, you set up organization, it's sort of around product and engineering. Those are the biggest sort of roles, and also number of people who are in an org. So I did a lot of roles. And so by the time I was a year into Google, I knew that this is not for me because I wanted to get into delivering things myself to the users. And I asked sponsors if they were willing to put me on a rotation for product. So I did a rotation for product for 6 months, which meant that I'm on loan and I'm just going to do product role. If I'm good at it and the team likes me, I'm going to continue. If I'm not good at it, or if I don't like it, I'm going to go back to strategy. And so it was a very low risk thing for me from that perspective to just try out product. And then, of course, I loved it, and the team found that I was adding some value, and so I converted to product. So my journey into product was not through, well, I did interview in Google. If you're switching to product ladder, you have to interview again, on sort of the product role. So I did interview, but my transition was rather sort of stepwise. So that's what I would say. If you can do internships in product, if you can, do product related projects inside your own company, take the chance to do that. The philosophical angle of this question is make sure you really are a good fit. You really want to do product management. It is the in thing to do. And if you end up there, you don't like your day-to-day job, it's not worth it, right? You need to enjoy what you do. I'll tell you a story here. Me and one of my friends both started product rotation almost at the same time. I loved it. She hated it. And so she went back to strategy because she's like, I don't want to be dealing with, what should be, the marketing story of this, and how do I talk to legal to make sure that this consent thing is not, it's too much details for me. And I want to work at strategy level. I don't want to like switch between strategy and execution. And so, and she's great at strategy. And so she went back and she said, I'm happy here. I don't want to do product. And so, just make sure it's right for you, because you'll put in so much effort it takes effort to get into this role because it's a high demand role now. You do so much effort and they're like, oh my God, this is not for me.
I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I heard you say was that a product is, if you really want to transition, you've not done it before, then probably try and do it within your organization. Do a rotation, put your hand up for a opening, whatever you require, and then from there gain or get some internship experience, and then sort of see how you can transition. It's hard to transition out from a non-product role in one company to a new one. It's not.
Yeah, the only exception I would make is if you're joining a really early stage company as like a very early employee or a co-founder. I think in that case, like you can do whatever role you want. And so if you really think you're good at product, even if you've not done it before, you can become a product person. I do think the learning curve is quite steep if you've not ever done product before. You can totally do it. So yeah, there's like a hard switch you can do if you have a lot of agency in your own, like defining your own role, which one generally happens in an early stage company.
Okay,
but if you're
sorry,
I was just saying, if you're joining an established company, you probably need to try it out a little bit before.
And they need to try you out too, right? It's not that easy. Okay. Okay. There is a question here from Archana. I hope that answered your question. I saw your question in chat and I picked it up from there. This is Sumedh from Mumbai. He wants to know if there are any prior domain knowledge is helpful to become a better product manager, or is this domain agnostic and overall technical and people management skills suffices?
It's a really heated topic in product management. So I don't know if there's a single answer to it. It depends on who you ask. I can tell you where the majority view is moving towards. 10 years back, if you would have asked a Google product manager if product is a skill or a domain, they would have said skill. Product is a skill. And so a lot of big companies, and I think Google is where product management roles started, in a sense, in the early 2000s. Melissa Mayer, who's the CEO of Yahoo, she was the first product manager, because she's like, oh, we need to have a role that sort of is between engineering and market. And so if you asked a traditionalist, especially, maybe 6, 7, 10 years back on what product is, they would have said, if you have the skill, you can build whatever product. You can build a product in entertainment, you can build a product in sort of productivity, you can build a product in health. And even today, I would say that perspective is there in a lot of big companies. Companies like Google have programs like APM programs, which you do rotations across multiple products. You'll do 6 months in Maps and 6 months in YouTube, and it's to be able to hone that skill set so that you can go into any situation and build that and build a good product. More recently, in the last 5 to 7 years, um, because the product role has become so sophisticated now, there is more and more specialization. People, for example, there are product managers that do hardware products, and hardware products are very different than software product. You have to plan 2 years in advance. You need to understand supply chain. You need to understand costing. You need to, of course, understand the software aspect of it, but there's a lot more to it. And if you've done a hardware launch before, of course, you have more experience on what are the variables involved. It's the same with industry products. For example, I've been in the reason I was able to move was because I had experience in health and I wanted to build products in health. And health is also a very complex field. You need to be able to understand what's regulated versus not, and how to do it the right way, and what's the clinical implications. And so I think more recently it's becoming more nuanced, and specialization is helpful. Um, but yeah, I think the traditional product manager sort of group inside, in this entire sort of role, they still think that it's mostly skill. I think it's a little bit of both. You can pick up one or the other. You should have something to start off with. You can get into a new sector. Should have done, if you would have done product before, you'll add value on day one, and vice versa. So it's a
Right. So
difficult question to answer.
interestingly, like you have domain expertise, or you worked in the healthcare sector for a while. So how did that sort of help you when that domain knowledge must have been critical when you sort of moved into a product role here, right? There was something.
Yeah, I think you can. That's the thing. Like, it's when you see what you bring to the table on day one, right? And I had worked so closely in the health space that when I also work on a feature set that is very health oriented. How do you like assess somebody's health status from the signals that are coming from phone? What is the clinical validity of that health status? Can you work with clinicians and figure out that you're saying things that are actually true, and also sort of having the intuition of when is it that in health, unlike a lot of other spaces, you can't like break things and like learn from by breaking things, right? Like you're dealing with people's lives, and so the hurdle is very different than a typical technology product that is low stakes. And so that is a mindset shift. And so a lot of times what I brought to the table was the seriousness around, you can't just launch something and see if it, of course, even in health, there's spectrum from wellness, fitness to health. And so it's maybe it is okay to have more rudimentary products launched in the fitness space, but not okay if you've not done clinical trial on whether you can diagnose atrial fibrillation on heart with wearables, you cannot launch the product. And so it does help, especially in technical fields, or in sort of complex fields like hardware and healthcare. It does help on consumer focused industries. I guess every industry has its nuances. So I do think it helps if you have this industry background.
Okay. Let's take another question here. This is Hardik. Wants to know, what are your thoughts on product versus growth product role? I'm not sure what the difference between the two is. Maybe you can explain that, and if indeed there is a difference between the two.
So the role you do day to day dramatically changes based on the stage of the product. And It's a good question because not every product manager plays the same role. If you're in an early stage company, very early stage company, the product's major role is definition. What should we build, etc. If you're in a growth stage company, the product's major role, and I think the in early stage company, it's basically to get product market fit. You'll hear this term product market fit. What it means is you need to be able to understand what sticks, find a problem that you're really solving for the user. That's what early stage product managers do. Growth stage product managers are the next stage, where you have a company that has some product market fit. Like, you've launched something and, there are a few users that love it. From a few years that loving it to be able to make it a mainstream product is what the growth PM role is. That role is a lot about iteration, expansion, thinking laterally about, okay, how do we get more customers, add more use cases, how do we make it broader, how do we launch in new markets. And so that's what a growth role is. And then after growth role is sort of, mature products. And so a lot of the roles are about optimization, maintaining the product. There's also I think in the mature product, there's a really interesting product manager role of actually sunsetting a product. And it is not easy to actually stop a product. And a lot of times you need to like deprecate features. You need to start building something new and say, hey, we are not going to work on it anymore. And so I think those are the three stages. You have like extremely early stage, which is product definition, product market fit. You have the growth phase where you have product market fit, but you need to expand your user base, expand the use cases, expand the features to become a mainstream product. And then, of course, there's the mature product. So, for example, a PM in search, it depends on what search feature, but broadly, like if you're on Google search, like you'll probably be working on the extreme end of, hey, it's a really mature product. And if you are in an extreme, even within Google, for example, if you are in a research, if you're a research product manager that's looking at extremely new technologies and trying to figure out, hey, is there a market there, you'll probably work on. So even within a company, depending on what feature and product you work on, you can be in either of the extremes. You will need the same three skills, but the proportionality changes, right? It's more strategic.
The three skills are
execution, strategy, and storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interestingly, this is Olivia, and she's part of our AMP cohort right now. And she wants to know if you have any insights for someone who wants to attempt a possible career pivot to product management from a role which is completely, not what she does right now has nothing to do with that. She's mostly in a learning and development domain. And from there, she wants to possibly explore the idea of a career pivot to product management. Any insights, any tips, any thoughts here?
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting to think of a new career path. I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is why. Why is it that you want to make this switch? It's a easy question, very difficult to answer. But do that thinking. Talk to your friends who are product managers. Talk to product managers in different companies. And once you realize that it is the right role for you, try to figure out what kind of company or product really excites you. Because until you answer those two questions, you would not know where to start. And so to be able to answer that question, again, you can talk to people or you can try out something. Like say, hey, I want to see if I want to be in an early stage company and try to define the product, or I want to be in a late stage company because I want to learn from other people, etc. Once you've done those two, I would say try to create low stake opportunities for you to then do product. And so you might be in learning and development, try to find a company that's in learning and development and building technology products there. If you're interested in the field, of course, like it's very difficult to change industry and role at the same time. And so if you're in L&D, there are lots of companies that are building technology solutions for L&D. So you can start off by doing a non-product role in an L&D company, which is product ancillary. You can also sometimes make a break into a product role in L&D if you do have very crucial insights on users, right? And so um, do that, do like low stake, take low stake opportunity, do ancillary roles, um, and then I guess eventually find sponsors who are ready to like make this hard change for you, or like the pivot for you. And so
So you
yeah,
were talking about sponsors. Perhaps if you can explain to people what you mean by sponsors.
yeah, it's so they are your cheerleaders. You need to have cheerleaders in life, both in personal and professional life. And in professional life, people who know what you bring to the table, have worked with you. Sponsors are generally people who've worked with you or seen you as a leader. Um, they are willing to bet on your next move, right? So the reason of course did not give you all the details, but the reason I could move to product was because my VP of BizOps, which is the first role I joined in Google, I had a conversation with her, and first she helped me think through if it's the right move for me. Right? She's like, I want to make sure you're not doing this because everybody wants to be a product manager. So she helped me sort of really clarify my intent. And after the conversation, is like, I think you'll be a great fit for product role. And then she put in a word to the product VP and say, hey, you know, we have this person. She's passionate about exploring product. And I know her, and she's done well in this role. And so I vouch for her. And so, of course, then people take you seriously. So I think that's why it's important to have cheerleaders. There is the only way to have cheerleaders is by building authentic relationship and like doing your job. And so you don't, it's not, I think you don't need to do, this is my way of working. People have to, you do need to invest in building relationships, but sponsors are people who have deep relationships with you. I think, all of you guys who are hearing this, I'm sure like if you think back, you can write, 3, 4, 5 names in the in the organization you work on people who can bet on you. Those are your sponsors, right? So rely on your sponsors when you're making a hard pivot.
Okay, I have another interesting question, which is what is the career hierarchy of a product manager? And one more that I'll add here, I'm not sure if it's the same question, but it says, is your, okay, I'll ask that later. But what is the career hierarchy of a product manager? And then I have another interesting question, which I want an answer to as well.
So what's the career hierarchy? Well, there is none, and is one way to answer it. And I would say product manager is a relatively flat role. But the reason I say that is once you're a product manager, your title is product manager forever, right? So you like product manager 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, and then at some point you become
is it junior product manager, senior product manager, senior product? Is that how it goes?
Yes. That's how it is. But the role does change, and it of course like your scope changes, right? And so um, as I said, junior product roles are a lot more about execution. And you learn from your seniors. You learn on how to like look at a portfolio, look at things at a broader level, and ask the right questions, etc. But the role itself is very execution focused, and experimentation, A/B testing, launching feature A versus feature B and seeing like what sticks. It's a lot more about that. As you go up in the ladder, as I said, it's a lot more about a portfolio view of what we should be doing, what we should be building, and so more sort of ambiguous, unclear questions, if you may. And then, of course, like if you are, eventually the CEO is the product manager of the company, right? And so, eventually it is, as you go up and up, it becomes more like general management. And so you'll have, people reporting to you, and you'll have, you need to do all the things that you need to do in organizations, which is, manage, motivate, you're influencing, right? Like you don't really write requirements every day when you're a VP or above, right? So that's what I would say. Juniors execution, there's group product managers who are like sort of more strategic, and then you have director VPs who are general managers, if you may. Eventually, every role becomes a general manager role, I think, unless you go to the IC route. There is a individual contributor, or IC is what we say, route in product management, where you never actually take people who report to you. And so we have like, extremely senior directors and VPs. I don't know if we were directors in product management that never took the route of getting anybody under them, because they always wanted to work on high stakes products. And so there is that role as well in product management, where the complexity of the product you work on increases, but you don't. It's rare though. I would say most of the product managers eventually end up going the route of people management. So.
Okay, and this was the question that I'm very interested in. How are product managers evaluated on performance? Is it based only on a successful product launch, or are there scenarios where you're working with an already successful product and you are sort of growing it? So how does management, or how are product managers eventually sort of, their performance, how is it evaluated across?
So there are a few different aspects. The first one is objective metrics, as you mentioned. So it could be, product engagement, usage, number of users. If everything from, did you grow this product? Did you launch a new product? Did you launch a new feature? And in a sense, these are all like objective metrics. The second aspect is around skills. And so it's totally possible for a lot of reasons, especially in big organizations. You might be working on a product that gets deprioritized. Not up to you, sometimes, it's above your level, etc. And so I think the second thing is that sort of becomes very important, which is how are you doing across the core skill set of product management? Are you working with engineering? Are you clear on your requirements? Are you able to figure out user needs, etc., etc.? And the third thing I would say is like personal impact, which is mostly leadership kind of assessment, which is would people love to work with you? Do you build communities around you, etc.? So I think those are generally, different companies of course have nuances in each of these, but those are the three things you get judged on. Again, the weightage of those three things depends on the company as well as depends on how senior you are. I think for junior PM roles, it's more so on skills, because a lot of times you don't have as much agency in like being able to figure out what's going to stick, right? And the more senior you are, it's more important that you hit your numbers and you build a community. And so for more senior PM roles, it's objective plus leadership, objective metrics for leadership. For junior PM roles, it's mostly skills. So it's totally fine if you completely bombed a product and your product did not go anywhere. As long as you did it the right way and you learned, I think you will still grow as a product manager.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Shilpi, who's also part of our cohort, the second cohort, and she wants to know what's the difference between a product manager and a product marketing manager. And I'll just add, she's also asking if you're well versed with no code tools, can you become a good non-tech PM? I don't know even if there is a term as a non-tech PM, but generally.
So as I said, even for a technical PM, you don't need to know how to code. I don't know how to code. I work on pretty technical products. Sorry, remind me your question. I missed it.
She wanted to know what is the difference between a product manager and a product marketing manager.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the thing. Once a role becomes extremely high in demand, and also it's a very broad role, then there are offshoots of the roles, right? And so Product strategy is a role which is very similar to product role, but not same as product role. Product marketing is the other role. I would say they do a subset of what the product manager do. So, for example, for my product, I do have a PMM that works with me from my current product. For my previous product, we didn't have a PMM. And the role of the product marketing manager is what the role of marketing is in a normal org, right? And so it's not very different from typical marketing where they will figure out what marketing narrative or story is going to stick and what kind of channels should we use. Should we use digital marketing? Should we use influencer marketing? Should we do ads, etc.? And then eventually figure out what is getting most traction, what has best return on investment, and such. So, product marketing role, in my experience of the product marketing managers I've worked with, is basically a marketing role for a technology product.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a question from Saurav, who wants to know that he's worked on an early stage product, a pilot project, and now wants to move to a growth stage product. What can they what can he do to prepare himself? So after working on a pilot project in an early stage, now he wants to move into a product which is at growth stage. What should he do? 2 things that he should definitely think of right away.
I don't know if you really need to. I think if you've launched a product, you kind of know the basics, right? For a growth stage company, especially as you interview and prepare, I think it'll mostly be on how you scale things. And so learning both the market and user aspects of scaling, which is how do you find the right user segment and how do you build features that add on to your initial sort of portfolio of things that stick in the market. So I think to be able to scale the product features and also scale technologically, which again, the technological aspect depends on the company and how technical your role is. But if you look at Twitter under the hood, you will realize small things that they've done to be able to make an app that actually works for millions of people, right? And so you need to be able to think through how to scale. And lots of way to do it. You can, read case studies. You can sort of, talk to product managers who are in growth stage companies, but eventually you'll have to do it to learn it. If you have the product skill set, I don't think it's not as if growth stage product managers can only get growth stage product management roles. It's not that strict, right? So as long as you have the basics, you should be able to get into the role of growth stage.
All right. This is another interesting question which is coming from Jay Gaurav. He wants to know, how do you build deep relationship in large companies where there are very few roles and they are also very limited and very well defined? What do you do? So basically, he's really asking you is how does he get a sponsor who will help him to do what he wants to do eventually?
This one requires a full session. In my experience, the way to build sponsors is to really have authentic relationships. That's it, right? Like really understand the person for the person he or she is. Some tactical ways to do it is be curious about the person as a whole, right? Not just, hey, I got into this meeting, I need to impress the person and make sure that they sign off on A, B, and C. Just like take a step back, have empathy, understand where they're coming from. I think in McKinsey, there's always a golden question you ask before you actually start any meeting, which is, what do you want to get out of this meeting? Ask that to, especially if you're meeting a senior member. It's like, instead of just going in and saying, hey, this is my agenda, can you give me A, B, and C? Ask them, like, what is it that you were looking for? What are the biggest problems that you want to solve and I can help you solve? I feel like that sort of gives you an inkling into how they think. And the more you know how they think, the more you can build a relationship and help them achieve. Whether it's not just professional, it's also personal. The other thing is ask for coaching sessions. ask personal questions. Ask, hey, I want to do this. Do you have suggestion and advice for me? Because everybody loves to give advice. Everybody looks at a young person like, hey, I was exactly like you 10 years back. I was so energetic, this and that. So it's their way of giving back, and they love to give back. So ask for help, ask for advice, ask for professional questions, leadership questions, even personal questions. Ask, hey, I am having this, issue of like doing, lots of things in my personal life, and I am too stretched. How did you manage when you became a mother, when you became a father? Because they, that's it's important to treat them as whole people and not just as leaders who make decisions in meeting rooms. I feel like that's, find the opportunity, whether it's, in front of a water cooler, to really ask them how they are and just mean it. Don't say, hey, how are you doing? And just, run away. So yeah, just, how you'll make friends. I think they're just older friends, and they're they're wiser friends that you can have in your life. I don't know if that helps. But...
No, it does. So I think, thank you, Saumya. We're almost there. We still have a few questions left. All of you who have a few questions left, please feel free to send them to us. I'll ask Dipanita to put up our connect, and we'll definitely ask Saumya to answer them for you. And if you want to know more about the program, we are putting up a little bit the information about the program here. I think one of the interesting things, and I know you don't know much about AMP other than what we've told you, but everything that you're saying is really what the accelerated management program is about. A little bit of data, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of product leadership, a little bit about economics, understanding strategy, understanding. All of that put together can eventually help you to become a product manager, because that's what I've been hearing. And of course, lots of skills of execution. If you've got to do it, you've got to do it, right? So that's how you sort of work with it. Any last words? Since we are here and it's a I mean, yesterday was Women's Day, and I hear a lot of women wanting to become product managers these days. But any last sort of thoughts on, is it something that is used to be a domain of men, but is it something that women can break into?
Yes, I think we need more women product managers, because male products build products that males like. That's how it is. That's how unconscious bias works. 50% of the world is women, so 50% of the product managers should be women. And so if you are interested in product, and you're a woman leader, do apply. I think all the companies value it. I have seen the amount of changes I can make from a different perspective, coming in as a woman. And I have seen products which you can see the products like, hey, there was no woman product manager on this one. So yeah, please do apply if you are interested. I'm very passionate about it. If you're interested to like know more and understand as a woman how to go through these. I think in general, everything applies to both men and women. But as women, you do have sometimes
bring
more
us
complex.
Something different to the table, which the 50% of population will probably,
resonate with. Yeah, like we need to sell to women a lot of times for like products. Your customers are women, whether it's family products or it's product for their children or themselves. Like, yeah, become product managers. More women, the better. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Saumya, for taking time out for us. We really appreciate it. And as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to connect with us. The details are in the chat. Thank you, Saumya.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Saumya. That was brilliant.
Thank